Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Harnessing 3D Slicer for Research and Product Development. My name is Andinet Enquobahrie. I'm a Senior Director at Kitware, where I lead our medical computing team. Medical computing team is an interdisciplinary team of computer scientists, software engineers, and medical imaging experts, and we provide research, development, and technology integration services for research centers, universities, and companies working in the medical and biomedical business sectors. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I'm joined today by Sam Horvath, a principal engineer at Kitware and one of the core developers of 3D Slicer. Sam has played a key role in supporting the Slicer community, and she brings very deep expertise in building custom application using 3D Slicer. She will be providing some insights on how to customize 3D Slicer, and she will walk us through our live demo. We are also very happy to be joined by Jean-Christophe Fillion-Robin, JC, a distinguished engineer at Kitware and one of the long-time leaders of 3D Slicer developments since 2008. JC will be helping us monitor the Q&A throughout today's session. Before we get started, I would like to go over a couple of logistics. We will be following up after this webinar with a recording of the session along with the slides, so you'll have everything you need to revisit the content or share it with your team. During the webinar, we encourage you to engage with us by submitting your questions through the Q&A feature in the platform. These questions will be only visible to the organizers, and we'll do our best to address most of the questions during the available time for this webinar. If you'd like to connect with other attendees, feel free to use the chat feature, which is open to everyone. So with that, let's dive in. As we wait for others to trickle in, I would like to give a brief introduction to Kitware. We are a leading provider of software and AI R&D services, and we work with customers in government, industry, and academia across different areas: computer vision, medical computing, scientific computing, and high-performance software solutions. Our team consists of over 200 employees across 6 offices in the United States and Europe. Our core principles at Kitware is our commitment to open source software, similar to like 3D Slicer. We use these open source platforms to collaborate and innovate in different areas. In addition to 3D Slicer, we lead the development of a wide range of powerful tools in different domain areas. Just to mention some of the key platforms, CMake is a widely used build system that simplifies software compilation and management. VTK and ParaView, they are industry-leading visualization tools for 3D analysis and scientific computing. Pulse Physiological Engine is a very powerful tool that is used to simulate human physiology and used in healthcare training and research. And we do have many more open source tools. These open source tools are widely adopted by researchers, government agencies, and industry professionals worldwide. So here's a quick look at what we'll cover in today's session. We'll start by introducing 3D Slicer and give you some background what 3D Slicer is and what it can do. We will walk you through 3 primary use cases where Slicer is being applied in research and product development. We'll then look at different customization options available to tailor Slicer for your own needs. This will be followed by a live demo that will be led by Sam to show how all these come together in practice. We'll follow the demo with some frequently asked questions, and finally we will wrap up with next steps and resources for continuing your journey with 3D Slicer. Just to reiterate to those who just joined us, we'll be sending a follow-up email after the webinar with a recording of the session and a copy of the slides, so you'll have everything you need to revisit the content. But throughout the webinar, we would like to make this an interactive presentation. Feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A feature. So why is 3D Slicer so popular and in being used, making a huge impact in the scientific computing community? It's an open source, freely available platform that's designed for medical image analysis and visualization. And there are different options out there. So what makes 3D Slicer can stand out is it has the ability to empower researchers, product developers, entrepreneurs, innovators without any licensing barriers. It supports both clinical translation and commercial innovation. And we'll go a little bit about this when we cover the permissive PhD style license that 3D Slicer has. It's built on a very modular, extensible framework design, which means it can be easily customized, expanded, and can use it for a wide range of biomedical imaging application. And then obviously, importantly, it helps promote reproducible science and then foster cross-institutional collaboration because you can build it within 3D Slicer and you can share the workflow, you can share the pipeline with your collaborators. What are the key capabilities of 3D Slicer? You can use 3D Slicer to import and export data in a wide range of formats. Obviously, in medical imaging, DICOM format is the one that's heavily used, but there are other types of formats that are also available, handled, and managed within 3D Slicer. 3D Slicer supports advanced visualization both in 2D and 3D. Once you load the data, you can be able to perform different types of segmentation tasks, to isolate anatomical structure. And also you can apply registration techniques to align images from different modalities or different time points. After doing segmentation registration, you can use 3D Slicer for quantification purpose. Basically, you can measure, compute different metrics like volumes and distance that will help you in your clinical research. And then finally, and this is becoming one of the main use cases of 3D Slicer, is you can use 3D Slicer for real-time guidance in image-guided procedures, which is very essential for surgical and interventional workflows. So what are the three primary use cases of 3D Slicer? Radiologists and people who read images can use 3D Slicer as a radiology workstation because 3D Slicer already has high performance visualization and analysis features that can be used in clinical and also research domains. It has a very powerful programming platform. So 3D Slicer can be used as a research software platform where with using flexible programming environment, you'll be able to develop, test, and then share new quantitative methodologies. And lastly, and we'll talk more about this during this webinar, 3D Slicer is becoming a very important product development platform where medical device companies, innovators, and entrepreneurs can use it to rapidly prototype, iterate, and deliver solutions to end users. So with that, before we move on to, we'd like to hear from you. So we just talked about the first primary use cases of 3D Slicer. And we'd like to hear from you, what are your primary use cases of 3D Slicer? So if you could take a moment to respond to the poll, we would really appreciate it. And this will help us better understand how you are using 3D Slicer. So we've given you 5 choices here. If there are additional options or additional response, a different type, yeah, feel free to also put it in the chat as well. Just wait for another 5-10 seconds and all right. Yeah, thank you for to everyone who participated. Uh, you know, looking at the results, majority of the attendees are using 3D Slicer for clinical and academic research. And also, and the second top use case of 3D Slicer is for product or commercial application development. So, we'll be able, definitely will be covering different ways 3D Slicer is going to be used for clinical academic research and also for product development. Okay. All right. Thank you for participating. The next question is, would like to find out is how would you best describe your professional academic background? So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. So again, if you can take a few seconds to respond to this. So how would you rate your, let's see, no, I think, hold on, I think this is the wrong one. Let me go ahead, start. Best describe. There you go. This is the one. Yeah, we'll look at this one first. So how would you best describe your professional academic background? We've given you 5 options here: student researcher, clinical researcher, software developer, product development role, or educator. If you can take a moment to respond to this poll. All right. Great. Thank you for participating. So as you can see here, the majority of you are software developers, followed closely by product development role and clinical researchers. Excellent. All right. Thank you. Thank you for participating. So just to talk a little bit about what's, a little bit of history of 3D Slicer and what its current status is. 3D Slicer actually has been around for quite a while. It was first released in 1998, and since it's grown into a very powerful platform with more than 1.8 million downloads, with more than 300,000 just in the past year. If you look at publications using using Slicer, there are over 18,000 citations referencing 3D Slicer. And also, one of the main continued growing use of 3D Slicer is its extensions. So there are almost close to 190 extensions which have been downloaded near to 8 million times. So there's more and more development of this type of extensions and a huge use of extensions. We continue to host or participate the Slicer community in what we call a project week, where computer scientists, clinicians, and algorithm developers get together, and we've had more than 42 different events. The forum, discourse.slicer.org, its use is growing steadily, as you can see in this graph. Now the total number of users is approaching 10,000 users, and as you can see on the right, the most active discussion topics in the discourse are around segmentation, Python scripting, and that shows you more and more users are using 3D Slicer as a programming environment and as a product development platform, obviously DICOM and registration. And again, this is to show a little bit more about the use of 3D Slicer, again, in research publications. There were more than 4,400 mentions of 3D Slicer in citations last year. And another thing that's very exciting is the translation of 3D Slicer in other languages. So this is something that is led by by the community participants, where several languages like French, Ukrainian, Tamil, Arabic, and Portuguese languages are already have 3D Slicer translation over more than 95%. So and other languages are actively
So,
progressing.
so Antoinette, we
Hi,
do
Sam.
have a question on this one that's been posted. I think people are interested to know, well, where they can track the progress of how the translation is occurring and where they can contribute translations.
Okay, thanks, Sam, for that question. So, as you see the link that I put at the bottom, that's a good place to use to go to, and uh, Slicer uses a platform called Weblate. Weblate is a web-based translation platform that helps open source and community-driven projects like 3D Slicer to do the translation. So what I would suggest is for people to go to the Slicer project for Weblate and then register there, and also there is the Slicer extension package for language packs where there's a very detailed documentation how people can get involved. And this is all community-driven effort. Obviously, we'd love to see more people involved across the world, trying to get to that 100% coverage of Slicer translation. Okay, right. Thanks for that question. If there are more questions, please use the Q&A feature, or you can use the chat room as well. So the third use case of 3D Slicer, and which is growing use of 3D Slicer, is as a platform for product development. So we're actually seeing more and more companies and research teams using Slicer to prototype, customize, and deliver applications in both clinical and preclinical domains. So the examples that I show here are tools that Kitware has developed for commercial customers in preclinical research, neuroscience, and lung function analysis. All these are built using Slicer's modular architecture. Its flexibility combined with permissive open source license makes it easier for product developers, entrepreneurs, and innovators to be able to quickly customize 3D Slicer and deploy innovative imaging solutions. All right. So we covered the primary use cases of 3D Slicer. Next, what we'll do is we'll walk through what are the different ways of customizing 3D Slicer, and then we'll have a live demo. So to guide us through this, I'll hand it over to Sam Horvath.
All right. Thank you, Antoinette. I'm going to. So, what we're going to talk about here is the customization approaches for 3D Slicer. So there is a very wide-ranging approaches to customizing 3D Slicer, from just simply creating your own module to creating a full application. And we kind of have this broken down into several levels. So the first level is just installing extensions. The extensions are plugins that add new tools or features without modifying the core application. So these are things you go to the extension manager and you install, let's say, Slicer IGT to provide the image guided therapy functions like fiducial registration, transform tracking, and essentially just a package of new features you can add to your existing Slicer download. Level 2 is what we often call things like slicelets and guidelets. So these are specialized modules that take over the UI and enforce a workflow. So you install this module and it gives you a streamlined workflow over the top of your existing version of 3D Slicer. And these are great for building streamlined task-specific interfaces. And then the third level is the Slicer custom application. So you create a full custom application based on the 3D Slicer code base with your own custom modifications to 3D Slicer and your own custom modules. This lets you rebrand, so add a new look and feel, add new logos, package to create your own installer, and distribute your own tailored version of 3D Slicer.
Hey Sam, there is a
Yep.
question that just came in.
Mhm.
Are there any efforts to make Slicer a web-based tool as well?
Yes, I think we'll be looking at some of that in kind of the our looking forward section at the end, but it has been an overarching goal of the development team to transition 3D Slicer away from its current monolithic C++ code base to something that's more modular, more reusable as a library. Essentially, the goal is to pip install Slicer core and use that in, your own application with your own UI. Currently, the application, as I said, is monolithic, and it's very much tied into its GUI front end, which makes it harder to factor out pieces and reuse them. But it is kind of the active guiding principle of new development that we are doing in the 3D Slicer code base, is that everything that we want to do is uh, is kind of being pushed towards making sure that we're going to be able to make it a more modular tool, and therefore we can plug it into a different UI, a web backend, a web front end. And so that's all part of this modularization push.
Great. Another related question is please share open source example applications of various customization levels. I believe you'll be doing that,
Yep.
showing some examples, right? Okay,
Yep. So we're going to be looking at the open source, like open source applications, as we go through the customization levels, and starting with customization level 1, modules and extensions. So there we are. So for this, a new module is submitted to our extension manager here. Everything in the extension manager is open source, and I believe you can find the links to their repos through the extension manager pages as you browse through. And this is kind of the most basic way to add new functionality. You create an extension, you add modules to it, and you publish it as part of the extension manager so that other Slicer users can download and reuse it. And so often these extensions and modules are tailored around specific tasks. Like, say you have a novel, skull segmentation algorithm that you want to package into something that's reusable. You'll create it as a CLI or as a scripted module or as an AI powered module, and put it into extension and publish it on the extension manager. These modules can also contain new node types to define how new types of data are managed, but those are definitely more of a uh, in-depth development work rather than simply creating a new processing algorithm. So extensions are bundles of modules. A great example here is the Slicer IGT extension, which contains many, many modules that are related to the image-guided therapy tasks that one might want to do with 3D Slicer. So there are currently more than 190 extensions available through the Extension Manager. They are built every night, and with every stable release, with the on the factory machines that are maintained by the project for all 3 platforms. So we try to keep these as up to date as possible so that if new versions of extensions are provided by their developers, they can be made available in the Slicer Nightly version as soon as possible. So the second level of customization is kind of a specific type of module called slicelets and guidelets. So a slicelet is a custom module with its own interface. It runs over top of the full slicer window, so removing much of the cluttering UI that can distract from the specific tasks that you want to do, and allows you to switch between that simplified UI and the full UI of 3D Slicer. A guidelet is a slicelet, so one of these kind of UI rewriting modules that's tailored for IGT or image guided therapy procedures. They can support real-time imaging and tool tracking through the Slicer IGT extensions. They can be, with a reworked UI, they can be very touch-friendly and workflow-based. We often see these being placed onto tablet computers to be used in the OR, and great for clinical use as they leverage Slicer IGT. So a nice example, so this is an open source example of how the slicets or the Slicer simple workflows function are coded, is provided by our great friend and collaborator Andras Lasso, and this is the quick segments workflow. So this is essentially a highly simplified version of the Slicer segment editor that removes a bunch of the unneeded UI and allows you to just focus specifically on the tasks that you want to do. And so now we are coming to customization level 3. So that is the Slicer Cat or the Slicer custom app templates, which allows you to provide full custom applications based on 3D Slicer. So this lets you build your own installation package with custom branding, custom selected features, your own modules, both from existing extensions and including your own custom code. You can remove default components, define startup behavior, customize the splash screen, and tailor user preferences. This is ideal if you're building a standalone product or deploying a specialized tool. And we have a lot of tooling built around this to make it easier, specifically the Slicer custom app template project, which is a small cookie cutter based template. So cookie cutter is a project scaffolding tool that you can get through Python. And so that is essentially a big find and replace into the existing template where you can provide your own name, your own organization, branding, and everything you need to give you the skeleton of a 3D slicer in which you can put all of your customizations. So all you need to do is install Cookie Cutter with pip and then run it against the Slicer custom app template from GitHub. So the Slicer custom app template is maintained to work with the most recent version of the Slicer Nightly, and so it's updated to address any interaction issues with 3D Slicer itself. However, when you are building the template, you get to choose which version of Slicer that you want. You can build any stable version of Slicer into your application, or even any specific commits of the Slicer project. So if there's a very specific version of Slicer that you want for your project, you can easily define that and keep that definition without it being changed as Slicer is updated. So an open source example of the level 3, the full Slicer customization, is the cell locator from Allen Institute for Brain Science. So this is a tool that is designed to help researchers manually annotate slice images against a brain atlas. And so you have a fully segmented brain atlas, and you load your own image, and you kind of do a visual comparison to locate what features are present in your image and match them to what's in the atlas. As you can see, the interface is customized for the specific workflow. This looks like a very streamlined, very smooth interface, but under the hood, it's the exact same 3D slicer that you can download from download.slicer.org. But it's streamlined, focused, and branded for the organization. And this is really how powerful it can be. You can fully define your own UI while still making use of all of the already implemented and powerful features that are available in 3D Slicer.
Hey Sam, a question came through. So I'll read it for you. We're a product company interested in using Slicer for development, but we're mostly clinicians with limited coding experience. What customization paths would you recommend for a team like ours?
So I guess it depends if you're making a tool for internal use, like for example, for something to help process your own data or make your own internal decisions, a custom slicer module that you can just, drag and drop into existing 3D slicer would be ideal for an internal tool. But if you're making a product to sell, then the custom app, the full customization level 3 is really what you want to do there, because you want to add your own branding. You want to provide this as a piece of software to your customers. And so what you would want to do there, if you're a group that doesn't have a lot of like internal like development support, is to reach out to a third-party developer like Kitware or someone else to help translate your clinical workflow into 3D slicer modules that can go into a custom application.
Thank you, Sam. Again, just to remind everyone, if you have any questions, please post it on the Q&A feature. Thank you, Sam.
Yep. All right, so what we're gonna look at next is kind of a quick demo of what kind of the under the hood process, the internals of one of these custom applications can look like. What we're going to look at is a custom application that we have been developing along with our collaborators at Brigham and Women's Hospital, and that is the NewNav neuronavigation platform. So this is built on 3D Slicer, and we're going to kind of show you what that looks like under the hood here. So let's see, we have a question. So there's a question regarding commercial examples of the Slicer custom app approach, and some of that regarding Qt licensing. We will be addressing a lot of the licensing stuff at the end. But as far as examples of commercial products using the 3D Slicer custom app, there are many that we can't discuss because, those are, commercial relationships we have with customers, but sometimes customers who have come to us projects have allowed us to discuss those projects. And you can see on this 3D Slicer's development platform slide where we have actually 3 of these are commercial products that were made for customers. And the one down the corner there is XenoView VDP is actually FDA approved. And so we do have examples for that. And we have blog posts for pretty much all of these on kitware.com, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Excellent. All right, so what we're showing here is our application NewNav. So this is built on top of 3D Slicer. It is intended to be a low-cost neuronavigation application, so bundled with low-cost tracking hardware in order to provide, neuronavigation solution in low-resource environments. And so this is our fully custom UI that we have built on top there, intended to walk you through, very specific steps for loading patients and then going through planning, registration, and then finally navigation steps. But under the hood, this is still 3D Slicer. So we can, in here, reveal the original 3D Slicer UI, where we still, like under the hood, all the modules still exist. It's still the same data module, still the same viewers, but with a reworked and simplified UI so that you can only step through the exact sections that we want people to be able to interact with. So the tasks for this are kind of a very simplified skin and tumor segmentation. And so rather than stepping through all the steps in segmentation, doing smoothing and going through all the tools. All of this is just bound together into a simple slider and a single button to generate our skin segmentation with minimal UI interaction. And so you can compare this to what it looks like in stock 3D Slicer. So this is the version of 3D Slicer on which NewNav is based. We can do all the same tasks, but it requires much more interaction because 3D Slicer is the Swiss Army knife of tools here. And so everything's available. You can do whatever you want, but it requires lots of clicking, lots of interaction, knowing exactly where you want to go to do the same tasks, and it just takes longer versus the very simplified interface that we have here. So in addition to the skin segmentation, this also does a tumor segmentation. This is done with the Grow from Seeds tool within the 3D Slicer segment editor. And we have it, simplified down to just you paint inside, paint outside. And you're able to generate this relatively quickly compared to through the main 3D Slicer application. We also have similar, simplification support for placing markups. Here we have the placement of markups bound instead of placing arbitrary markups where you need to define what they're supposed to be. We have them predefined, and you just put. So for this, we're placing an entry, we're placing a target, and it's predefined to be this trajectory. Similarly, for registration, we have a reworked version of markups where we are placing very specific points. So instead of just a list of markup points, which are, out of the main interaction 3D Slicer, you have to name each point yourself. You have to know what points you're wanting to place. Here, all the points are pre-named, and so I want to place the Nasion. I click place it, and it's registered, and I know that that one's already taken care of. And we have a predefined list of facial landmarks that will be used for registration. Let's pop down a few more here. And allows you to quickly move through the pre-planning for registration without having to spend a lot of time manually defining things. So we won't be running through the hardware aspects of this because we're kind of focusing on software, but later in this portion, you would do the same registration tasks with picking points on your actual patient, and then going all the way to a navigation view, which is a customized view that gives you multiple views of where your tool is with respect to the patient, where your tumor is, and just a very nice, fully custom layout within 3D Slicer that allows us to focus on exactly the tasks that we want to do.
Hey Sam, a question just came in. For NURNAV, who did the work of regulatory submission? Is it an FDA approved tool?
So it is not FDA yet. We have been testing NewNav under IRBs or the IRB equivalents in other outside the US, and so we're currently working on doing an FDA regulatory submission. And so that is a joint effort between us here at Kitware and the folks at BWH to hearten to continue the development so it can be an FDA approved tool and to do all the documentation. And so we are actively doing that work, and that's being done in part by us. All right, we've got a couple other questions here. So let's see, what's the hardware integrated with NewNav? So currently we are, with the NewNav system, we are using the OptiTrack cameras. So those are a lower cost, like $2,500 to $3,000 camera, compared to the much more expensive, NDI cameras. But it would also support NDI cameras, as all the hardware that it works with is used through OpenIGT Link and Plus. And so any tracking system supported with Plus can be plugged into the NewNav system. All right.
So maybe you can also
Yep.
answer. One of them is a little bit specific. I think JC will be able to address that on. But the other one says, how does the slicer custom app approach build into a standalone binary installer? I'm familiar with CPAC for C++, pip for installing libraries, but have never built on an installer for a Python app.
Yes. So the kind of how this works for 3D Slicer is that 3D Slicer itself bundles its own Python interpreter. So it is mainly a C++ application, so Qt C++, and then bundles along with it, just as part of its, binary install, its own Python interpreter that it uses during the runtime to interpret Python files and kind of run the Python half of its application. And so it's not bundled as a Python app. It's a C++ application that kind of brings a Python interpreter along with it. And so this is, one of the things that we're looking to change with the modularization approach. But as far as how the Python interpreter is bundled. So what we do is we're building a portable Python distribution that can literally be zipped up and taken wherever it needs to go with the rest of the application. And so since the Python distribution, including all of its site packages, is portable, it's easy to just pack it into the installer. All right. And so let's see. So this, let's see, I think the reslice driver question is a bit more technical than we can get into here. I will Bala, I will send you an email with the details on that, because
Sure.
that's just a bit much to dig into. Yeah.
Yep. And then we'll provide at the end
Yeah.
resources and how people can reach out to us if they need help on specific. Okay. So should I take over, Sam, or you still
Yeah,
got?
I think we're good for the demo portion. I think
Excellent.
yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, thank you for that demo, Sam. Again, please continue to post your questions on the Q&A or chat. I see JC is busy answering some of these questions, and we'll be able to address as many questions as possible. Next, we want to take a moment to go through some of the frequently asked questions about 3D Slicer. No surprise, some of those questions already came up already in the webinar, but these are some of the common topics that come up around using 3D Slicer for both product development or clinical research. So the first one is around product development, and then the question we usually get is, can I use 3D Slicer to create an application for FDA approval or CE mark? And the answer is yes, but obviously with an important caveat, right? So while Slicer can be, and we gave some examples, and you see here an FDA approved product that we helped develop with a company called Polarian. 3D Slicer is a powerful foundation to build regulated application. But however, if you're building a product around it, you'll need to follow the appropriate regulatory pathway for software as a medical device, right? And I mean, these are things like IEC 62304 for software lifecycle processes, ISO 13485 for quality management system, and then also ISO 14971 for risk management, right? So the question is, yes, you can use it. You can use Slicer, and it can be part of an FDA cleared or CE mark solution. However, it has to be supported by documentation, regulatory process, and approval. Um, and and we've done this already for commercial customers that are using 3D Slicer for FDA approved products. So just kind of to summarize, you can use 3D Slicer, but as a product developer, you are responsible for establishing the quality system, obviously defining the intended use of the product, managing the risk and usability, and of course, doing everything else that's required as part of regulatory submission, maintaining traceability, verification and validation, and also preparing the submission to FDA for your product. And another question we often get asked is, well, you know, 3D Slicer seems too complex. I just need something simpler. And you know, and we understand people's concern that Slicer does have a learning curve, but that's because it's built to handle a complexity that you see in real world medical imaging, and it's trying to serve different type of users. And as we point out, you could be a product developer, you could be a clinical researcher, or you're just using 3D Slicer as a programming environment. Now, the the great thing about it is, you know, uh, there is flexibility and modularization that's available as part of 3D Slicer. So with the flexibility and powerful features available, you get to decide how you want to use it, right? So basically, if there are particular modules and extension that you need, you can just use those. And also, there's a very active community, very helpful, responsive community that can provide guidance as well. So in many ways, if people spend a little bit of time at the beginning to understand the foundation of 3D Slicer, the basic principles, then it's always easier to customize it for your own need. All right, so let's look at one. Again, we just want to learn more about what aspects of 3D Slicer people find to be complex. So let me quickly bring the poll here. So if you can take a couple seconds to respond to this question. We provided some options here, like is the user interface has too many options. So please go ahead and respond to this poll. Where did you have a challenge running workflows? Are there too many features? Maybe you were trying to use it for product development and you found it to be hard to customize. If you have any other additional reasons why you felt, or other aspects of 3D Slicer that makes it very complex and challenging, please also mention that in the chat. And I see there are people also asking about questions. So user interface, workflow, too many features, challenges in customization. What aspects of 3D Slicer do you find most complex and challenging? Please take a moment to answer, to provide your input. All right, so I'm gonna end and share the results here. So we see 45% of you find it hard to customize for your particular needs, and this is pretty much consistent with a lot of our interaction with customers and potential users. And then next comes is the user interface has too many options. So obviously, as Sam showed with the new nav, if you if you're able to do the be able to customize it, then you'll be able to simplify the user interface as well. Okay. All right. Thank you for participating on that poll. The next question that actually came up a little bit earlier as well is licensing, right? So another big question we get is 3D Slicer uses Qt for graphical user interface. How do we deal with the LGPL and GPL license constraint when building a commercial application? I think the key point here is, and we have this really nice infographics on the right that you can see, is Slicer uses Qt under the LGPL license, right, which does allow commercial use as long as you follow the compliance requirement. So as long as you're using Qt in a way it complies with its LGPL license. And usually the main one is making sure you are dynamically linking to the Qt libraries and you're not modifying them, right? As long as you do that, then you're compatible with their LGPL requirements, and then you're free to use it for a commercial product. And obviously, again, you definitely have to talk to your legal advisor in terms of licensing. But in our case, working with several commercial customers, as long as you satisfy the LGPL requirements, you'll be good to go. All right. If you have any additional questions, please add it to the Q&A. So next, let's look at, and again, before we wrap up, we want to share with you what are the things we're already thinking about to do next, right? The first one is as this came up already earlier about, is there going to be a web version of 3D Slicer? We're already continuing some efforts around cloud integration and modularization. One of the active effort right now is trying to integrate 3D Slicer Python libraries within Tram. Tram is our web-based platform that you can use for easily prototyping web applications. So that's another big effort that we have going on right now. Obviously, on the infrastructure side, we will continue supporting adding telemetry for extension modules, looking into supporting Qt6 version, and also we always look at continue to update the underlying third-party libraries that 3D Slicer depends on, like VTK, Python, and others, and better support of Mac OS operating system. And then also we do have customers and users interested in packaging 3D Slicer on a Mac OS system. We also have an active effort in improving the general look and feel of 3D Slicer as well. Obviously, with a continued interest in AI in the medical image analysis community, we're actively working on deeper AI integration with 3D Slicer. So this spans a lot of different areas. One area is having a better built-in model management development, right? So you can have different AI models that you can query and use within 3D Slicer. Being able to continue to improve some of the interactive AI assisted tools available within 3D Slicer. And also, 3D Slicer can be used as a front end data annotation for some federated learning activities that are becoming common in the AI ecosystem. So all these different efforts are going on right now to have a more and seamless integration of AI models with 3D Slicer. So the last question we have is, what would you like to see next in 3D Slicer? And I think this is going to help us a lot in planning the next set of features and work we would like to focus on. So I just started a poll where we've given you about 5 choices here. What would you like to see next in 3D Slicer? So please take a moment to respond to this poll. It's web web-based development, more AI integration? Are you looking for more simplified, enhanced user interface? Do you need us to spend more time providing additional documentation and tutorials? Please take a moment to enter your choice. Yeah, and we'll have another 5-10 minutes to answer some additional questions. So if you have some questions that we haven't covered yet during the webinar, please add it to the Q&A. And I know JC and Sam are looking at the QA in the chat room as well. All right. So looking at the results for the poll, um, I would say more documentation tutorial, and then closest next are web-based version and simplified and enhanced user interface. Okay. So yeah, thank you for providing that insight. All right. Well, as um, you know, just we want to provide at the end to some resources here. If you're excited about 3D Slicer, what you've seen today, and you want to explore further, here are some next steps. First, if you haven't tried it yet, again, go ahead and try it out. You can download 3D Slicer at download.slicer.org and start experimenting with it right away. If you run into some questions, the Slicer Discourse Forum is a great place to connect with the community and then get support. But if you are looking for more structured help, for example, if you're building a proprietary application and you don't want to talk about it on open forum, Kitware provides training, customized development and deployment support, and you can reach us at www.kitware.com/contact. And as we pointed out, we are able to help on building custom applications, new features, different ways of branding your 3D Slicer product for your applications. So with that, let's see. Are there any questions, Sam and JC, that you wanna we should address?
So I think, JC, if you're able to answer these, we've had a handful of questions about VR and AR stuff.
Okay.
So if we
Is
could
there is there a question that would be useful for the broader audience? Hear what?
mainly about
Mhm.
current questions about current plans for VR and AR support. So
Okay.
pretty high
J
level.
Yeah,
Yeah,
JC, you wanna
yeah,
address that?
I did reply directly, but we remain committed to support VR and XR integration of VTK and Slicer. And yeah, our office in Europe, we are currently waiting to hear back from like a large multi-year grant from the French government that will help further improve the current state of the plugin. And in the meantime, if you have specific needs to help integrate new hardware, I suggest you reach out through our support form or the issue tracker.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So are there do people have any additional questions that you would like to address here? So I see a question about software modularization. And as we pointed out, that's what makes 3D Slicer actually very flexible, easy to use. Most of the logics and particular functionalities are modularized within Slicer modules, right? So yeah, if you are looking for help in that, feel free to reach out to us or ask a question on the discourse. Um, So in terms of 3D Slicer training tutorials, there are um, some tutorials available online, but also in some cases people need a lot more focused tutorial training, and that's one of the things we do at Kitware is we provide private training. So if you have a set of functionalities, features, a particular need you have in 3D Slicer, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to organize a private training that covers specific topics to what you're looking for. Okay. All right. Well, I think unless there are additional questions, I think I would like to thank everyone for joining us. I would like to thank JC and Sam for helping with the webinar. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will follow up with the recording of the video for this webinar and the slides that we showed. So you'll be able to revise the content that we presented and be able to share it with your team members. But with that, again, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today, and then I wish you the great rest of the day. Thank you.